Hey, welcome to how to draw video. Today we're going to be doing, might butcher this, axolotl, I think is what they're called. They're really cute and they're really adorable. So to get started, we're going to first draw the body shape, which is kind of like a bean-like shape. So a very easy way to get that. I'm going to start kind of in the middle-ish of my page, leave plenty of room for a tail and plenty of room for the head. So I'm just going to start with a frowny face, kind of like this, just very lightly drawn, such as so. And then what I'm going to do, I want it to be kind of a bean shape, so their bellies kind of dip a little bit, just a tiny bit it seems. So I'm going to kind of mimic that same curve a little bit further down like this, but not too much, just a little bit. So it's almost like we're drawing a bean, like a kidney bean or like a lima bean or something like that. And here I'm just putting parentheses on opposite sides of those two frowny faces in order to create that bean shape. So another way that you can achieve that if you're having a hard time doing that is, you don't have to draw this part of course, but you can draw two circles and then connect the tops of the circles with little frowns and the bottom of the circles with little frowns and then erase the inside. So if you struggle getting that shape, try this technique and it might be a little bit easier for you. Otherwise, once you have your kidney bean shape done, then we're going to go ahead and move on to the head. So I'm going to draw it kind of in this position where it's kind of coming at you. So I'm going to overlap the head with the body. So I'm going to measure, the head seems to be about the same length from this point of view for the body. And I see that it's kind of like a round shape, maybe a little bit more ovular. And if I'm looking at this one, it's also kind of like an egg shape on its side almost. So a little bit more of an oval shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here on the kidney bean, kind of like closer to this side, a little bit down. And then I'm just going to start off with just drawing kind of like a wide frowny face like this. And then I want to figure out where I want the bottom of my head. I'm going to do also kind of like a wide frowny face, or sorry, smiley face this time. And then my goal is just to connect it to the top, like this. I'm just going to connect it to the top. That way I can erase this inside piece. And now I have the head and the body started. So I'm going to save the face for a little bit later maybe. I'm going to go ahead and do these, I have no idea what those are, gills, tentacle things, whatever those are. An easy way to do this, we see that it's coming off the side of the head here and right behind the head here. And we see that they kind of curve off and they look fluffy. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to first start right here where the body and the head meets. And I'm just going to do kind of like a diagonal line and then end it with a slight curve. I want to move down a bit, diagonal line with a slight curve. This one is facing another way, so I'm going to do kind of like almost a straight line and then curve it up just a tiny bit. Notice that I've left a big gap between each. That way I can add those frills. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. This one, notice that it's really long and it goes past the body. So I'm going to start on the side of the head and go up. Be careful don't make these too close together. They have pretty wide heads, so don't let those get too close. There should be a pretty big gap between those. All right, then I'm going to do a diagonal line here that kind of slightly curves up, and then one more that's a little bit shorter that kind of curves up as well. Now, in order to get these frills, I'm going to be using that Z line, which if you've drawn with me before, you might be familiar with it. It's the line that looks kind of like a zigzag line, but if you can imagine that it's kind of like grass that's being blown in the wind and you're drawing curves with it. So it's like you're drawing a parenthesis and another parenthesis, and you're connecting them to the top corners. But every now and then you switch the parenthesis to face a different direction, kind of like this. Because if I look at those frills, they're really kind of fluffy looking on the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line here as a guideline. I'm just going to draw these Z lines going along the side of it like this, okay? So to start, I'm going to start at the base. I'm just going to add little wiggles coming down. And you can make these as short or as long as you want. I'm adding a slight curve to mine just to give it a little bit more of a fun texture, but you can keep it relatively straight. I'll show you on this next one that I'm going to do, I'll show you a different technique. If you struggle with the Z line, because it is a little bit of a weird technique to get a hold of, but if you struggle with the Z line, this is another way that you can try to do this instead, is very, very lightly draw some lines just coming from this one, like this. Make sure to space them out and don't let them touch each other too much. And then what you can do is just kind of duplicate the line on only one side, like this, and then just copy that. So that way you're just kind of like basically outlining the line that you did before, and then just kind of going with the flow of it. So that'll make it to where you don't have to worry about one line, you only have to worry about, or like you only have to worry about one side of the line. And it'll get you a very similar texture than what you had before. So I'm just going to stick with the Z-line because that's the one I'm used to and I really like that one. But you can use any technique you want, and you can even use a technique that I didn't show you. So there's so many techniques out there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the last one over here. Doing the same kind of technique, adding some of those frills and fluffs. And you can make it, like, I think this is definitely more stylized. Notice where I kind of crossed over right there. You want to try to avoid that. Otherwise it looks a little too scribbly. So when you're adding those little fluffs or those Z lines, try not to scribble. Otherwise it'll make it look a little bit messy. We want to try to avoid making it look too messy. All right, but anyway, what I was going to say is I'm not really sure of axolotl anatomy or anything. So, but if you want to take better, closer looks at these pictures, then you can definitely take a look at them to see what kind of frills that you would like on yours. So there is kind of like a darkish line in the middle of these frills. So I'm actually going to leave this little line right here in the middle of those because I think that kind of goes with it. All right, so now that I have my frills, I'm going to go ahead and do my eyes and my mouth. So since I want mine kind of in this one's position, I'm going to put the eyes kind of similar to this, but you can definitely put your eyes higher up if you would like to. That's kind of up to you. So for me, I'm going to put the eyes, the eyes are very far apart from each other. Notice how far apart the eyes are, and they are quite small. Of course, if you're doing more of a cartoony aesthetic, you can make them bigger, but they look very round. So I'm just going to draw little circles, and then I'm going to space it out pretty far, and then go to the opposite side of the head and then draw another little circle like this. You can change the shape up if you want. That's entirely up to you. It's just for me, I look at this and I see a circle. Now I'm going to add like a little highlight and then fill in the rest of it black, highlight, and the rest of it black, just to give it a little bit of character. All right, so I'm not 100% sure. This one has kind of a smaller mouth that is just a short distance between the two eyes, but this one, it looks like the mouth is a little bit longer. So feel free to either do a smaller mouth or a bigger mouth. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm gonna do right below the eye and put a dot, right below the eye and put a dot, just to be on the safe side. That way it's kind of in between. And then I'm just going to draw a very, very simple curve connecting those two dots. Just a little smile to connect those. So, oh, it looks so cute. It almost looks, there's a Pokemon called Wooper. It almost looks kind of like a Wooper. Is a Wooper an axolotl? I never made that connection. Anyway, okay, so here we have our really cute looking head. And I can't tell if that's like a nose. It looks like they might have two little dots for a nose right above their mouth, which look pretty cute. All right, so now that I have this, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the legs. So if I'm looking at the legs, I can see that they have kind of like, they almost come right below the head. So it looks like there's not really much of a neck going on there. So right below the head area, we kind of have this like angle, like an elbow, and then it has 4 toes. Yeah, 4 little toes kind of coming out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here on the side of the head, or on the side of the frills. I'm just going to do a very short line that makes a slight diagonal, and then one more that kind of almost like a greater than or less than sign that comes down just a tiny bit. You don't want the legs too big, otherwise it's going to look a little bit weird, and we want to try to avoid that. All right, so the legs are kind of skinny, but they're not like super twiggy, so be careful not to make them super buff unless you want to, but don't let them look like they're super skinny either. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow that same line and pretty much just draw a parallel line with that until I get to where I want my toes. Now, a good technique for these toes is kind of like on the outside of the toes, just draw 2 diagonal lines like this to make like a wide foot. And then in order to get 4 toes, we would draw 3 V shapes. In this case, the V shapes are going to be upside down. So I would go 1, 2, and then 1 in the middle for 3, like this. So 3 upside down V's. And then their toes don't end in a round shape like a frog. They just kind of end in a curve. So all I'm going to do is just do a little curve to connect those toes. And then there you have super easy feet. All right, so I see that the other foot is, from this perspective, look like it's coming out of the head just to make it look like it's swimming. But I don't see the elbow on this one. I only see half of it. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start right here next to the cheek, right below that fin thing. I'm just going to draw a parallel line like this. Check the distance between these 2 lines. You want it to be about the same as the distance between these. And then all I'm going to do is do that same technique as I did before. Kind of make it do a slight diagonal line out to make the foot a little wider. And then I have 4 toes, so I want 3 V's, or upside down V's in this case. So I personally like to do this. I do 1, 2 on the sides first, keeping in mind that I want the fingers to be kind of skinny, and then leave plenty of space so that you can fit that 3rd V in the middle like that, okay? So don't let those get too cramped. And if you notice it's too cramped, erase it, make those two original diagonal lines a little bit wider because you might have drawn them too close in the beginning. All right, so then I'm just gonna connect my fingers, just like this. So now I have cute little fingers for my axolotl. All right, so now I'm gonna keep this as the belly, so I wanna keep this and I wanna keep the back, and judging from my pictures, it doesn't look like there's too much going on back there except for a fin, but we'll do that one last, okay? All right, so now I have another leg back here that it looks like their belly overlaps the leg, and it might just be in this perspective. I can't tell from this one, so I'm just gonna go with what I see here. So I'm just gonna take this belly, and I'm gonna curve it up slightly into the body like this. So just a little bit less than halfway into the body. I'm gonna add like a little chubby roll thing right there. And then I see that the leg comes forward and down. So very, very carefully, I'm just gonna go from that belly, where that little indentation meets the bottom of the belly. I'm gonna go forward slightly and down slightly, like this. So it's almost like a greater than or less than sign that's been super stretched out. And then I'm just gonna start on the body, do the same thing again, forward slightly and down slightly. And then, how many toes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 5 toes. That's weird. All right, so they have 5 toes? Well, this one only has 4. We're just gonna go with 5. You can make it 4 if it's more accurate. I'm not entirely sure. Now, something to note, notice where this foot is right here. You want this back foot to be higher up on the picture. So if you accidentally made the leg too long, feel free to erase it and scoot it up some, or alter it just a bit, because you don't want this foot below this foot, otherwise it's going to make it look like it's spiraling, unless that's the pose that you're going for. All right, so now I'm going to make almost a flat line out the side here, and then a diagonal line here using the same technique. So if you're going for 4 toes, you need 3 triangles. If you're going for 5 toes, you need 4 of them. So I'm going to go 1, 2, now I got to fit 2 more in here, so I'm going to go 3, 4, like this. And you can connect the triangles as you go, or the little upside down V's as you go, so that you don't have to worry about connecting them later. But there I have my little toes on the back, and then we're almost done actually. Wow, that was fast. All right, so last thing I want to do, the tail goes really long. Just to make it more interesting, I'm going to curve my tail so that it curves into the front, because I think that'll look cuter. You can put your pose anywhere you want. You can have the tail curve up. You can even have it wiggle down here. So I am personally going to have mine curved to the front. You can do your tail any direction you want. So the tail is the extension of the spine, so I always start the tail on the spine. So I'm going to start at the spine here, and I'm just going to continue however long out I want my tail. And because I want that little curve, I'm going to curve that tail forward just a little bit like this. I'm going to cap this with a little parenthesis going backwards like this. Now, if I'm looking at the base of the tail is kind of like, I think this is probably either part of the belly or that's part of the base of the tail, but notice that it's right there behind the leg, and it does like a little curve, and then the tail continues, and then there's like a little fin down at the bottom. So right here on the back of my leg, I'm just going to add a slight curve going up like this. And then I'm going to add from that curve, that's where I'm going to continue my tail. So I'm just going to follow the curve that I did before, except my goal is to make it get skinnier as it gets closer to the tip of the tail. So I'm going to slowly get a little bit skinnier until I can get to the tip of that tail. And the tip of the tail is where you want it rounded off. So if you accidentally make a mistake like I did here, always remember erasing is totally normal. So now I have kind of a skinny tail that gets a little bit bigger. All right, so last thing I have to draw on my axolotl would be the, I'm guessing you can call these fins. They're like the really thin membrane that goes above the tail and below the tail. So I see that this is kind of sort of starting right at the base of the head, and then going all the way back to the end of the tail, and then coming back until it hits that bump that we just drew. So I'm going to start with the bottom fin first, just because I think that'll be easier. So starting right here, I'm just going to draw a line that follows. It looks like it gets a little wiggly in some areas, so feel free to add a little bit of a wiggle until it touches the tip of the tail. And then what I'm going to do, it goes around the tip of the tail. Oops, sorry, my bad. Here we go. So I'm going to go around the tail like this. And then my goal is that I want it to get all the way around and then go to the back of the head. So something that I like to do is I create what's called indicator dots. So I put a dot where I need it to go, and then a dot where it's starting. That way I know where I'm going to try to end up. And I do want the fin to be kind of tall, so I'm going to also put another indicator dot right about here, so I know that I don't want it to be too short, but I don't want it super, super tall. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at those indicator dots, and I'm going to try to connect those dots, almost like I'm playing connect the numbers. I'm going to add a couple little wiggles just every now and then to make it feel more fin-like. All right, so now that I've achieved this dot, now I see my next goal is to hit this dot. I'm going to go behind this fin thing and then connect the dot. So I'm just going to add a little wiggle wiggle, go behind, just jumping over, wiggle wiggle until we touch to here. And now I see that it's just kind of like a really thin line, and then it just follows the belly, or not the belly, sorry, the back. So I'm just going to add a second line like this that just curves until I have hit the back, and now I have my back line. So now I can erase a little bit of the back that got visible here. Oop, erased a little bit of the head, my bad. So now we have that fin that curves to the back like this. All right, so as some things that you can erase this line right here for the back of the body, because that body turned into the tail, and you can erase that line on the inside of the leg here. And then that's pretty much all that I personally need to erase. If you have extra lines, maybe this one, then you can feel free to go through and erase. So that's pretty much all that you need to have drawn for an axolotl. If you would like to shade with me, I am going to add a little bit of shading here. So, or if you would rather color it, coloring is always a great fun option. I like to hold my pencil like this when I'm shading, just because it makes it to where it's harder to push super hard, and that'll create a softer effect when I'm shading. Especially since my axolotl's head is above its back, or it's above its legs, I'm trying to add a darker shadow here just to add what's called contrast. Contrast helps make that head pop up just a little bit more. I'll also add a little bit of contrast back here with the back of the tail, going like this, and maybe a little bit on the belly to add some contrast there. Something else that you can always do, I personally sketch kind of lightly sometimes, so if you ever find yourself sketching too lightly, feel free to always go back and darken your lines if you would like, if you're trying to go for a line art heavy thing, or if you're going for more of a shading type effect and you don't want really dark outlines, you can always shade around your lines like this in order to make it to where your things in the front pop out more, so that you get more of a 3D effect. So here I'm just gonna add a little bit more shading up here, a little bit more there. Yeah, looking great. I'm gonna add a little bit on its back right here. Yeah, and then on its face, I'm gonna add a little bit on the side of its head just to make it feel more rounded, like this. I really like axolotls. They're really cute. I see them on a lot of like merchandise and stuff, so I'm assuming that they're a pretty popular animal. I've never had one for like a pet or anything, but I've seen them at like aquariums and stuff, and I think they're really cute. I like their little fluffy frills. I've seen people like on videos and stuff that they'll have an axolotl, and I guess that they're really slow moving sometimes, and so they'll put like little mustaches and stuff. They'll just draw with like a little marker on their tank, like on the outside of it, and they'll put like cute little mustaches and stuff on their axolotls, and I think that's so adorable. And eventually they swim away, but for that moment it's pretty cute. All right, so that's pretty much all I would do to this particular picture. I could add more shading later, but I think that this is pretty good for what it is. So there is an axolotl. Thank you for drawing with me, and definitely if you have anything in mind that you would like me to teach you how to draw or walk you through step-by-step how to draw, just to get you to practice a little bit more, feel free to let me know what you would like to learn how to draw next. All right, thank you for drawing with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.